I am the grave, I am the proof, I am the streets, I am the roots, the truth, the will, the strength, the fight, the heat of the day and the chill of the...
Herzlich willkommen, sehr verehrte Damen und Herren, zu unserem Medienkommentar.
Welcome, dear ladies and gentlemen, to our media commentary about the Vatican and Lucifer cult. What was revealed in 1992 already by the Mexican weekly newspaper Proceso caused a stir in the countries anew. From the mouth of the Grand Commander of the High Council of the Freemasons of Mexico, Carlos Vázquez Rangel, one may have heard back then, I quote literally, "Within the 8 blocks of Vatican, there are no less than 4 lodges of the Scottish Freemasonry." A father said in this connection that in certain countries where the church is not allowed to act freely, it is the Freemason lodges who secretly run the business of the Vatican. In the course of comprehensive research and outreach efforts, these days strong evidence is brought together that brings to light these tight connections between the Vatican and the Scottish Freemasonry. Were those decades of fights between the Catholic Church and the Freemasonry only tactical fake battles in front of the public?
I does. I am what they missing. We share the same vision. We ride for the cause, but we die for the mission. I am what they wanna be. I'm what they try to be. I am the truth in the dark. You can't lie to me. I am society. I am the solution. I am the match when we spark revolution. Pollute in my world. I am here just to clean it up. I am the reason these soldiers is teaming up. I am so good in the hood everywhere I go. I am the bass when it boom out your stereo. I am the lead when the shell leave the barrel. Promise I won't leave you dead, I will carry you home. I am all in my zone. I am order, I am stone. If I'm wrong, I am gone. I am Martin Luther. I am Malcolm X. I am a king. I deserve my respect. I am Obama. I am Alex Haley. You try to take my life, you can't have it, baby. I am Martin Luther. I am Malcolm X. I am a king. I deserve my respect. I am Obama. I am Alex Haley. You try to take my life.
The public was also kept from knowing who the creator of the greatest Freemasonry rite, the so-called Scottish Rite in its present form, is. It was none other than Albert Pike. Albert Pike was an observant Satanist and was also known as co-founder of the Satanic Church. During the years 1859 to 1891, Pike was the Grand Commander of the Scottish Freemasonry. Exactly this undeniable connection stirs the countries around the globe. Because Albert Pike wrote in his Freemason main work, Morals and Dogma,
yes, Lucifer is God. Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil.
Lucifer matutinus inveniat, ille inquam Lucifer quinescit occasum, Christus filius tuus, Christus filius tuus.
In further unmistakable words, Albert Pike declares Satan, that is the devil, as good and the creator God of the Bible as evil. In connection with this, watch further witness statements about this much disputed and secret Lucifer worship in the Catholic Church, also under Education Uncensored. For a better understanding, we compare the precise wording from the Oxford Dictionary of the key word Lucifer. For until now, the proper name Lucifer was only known in Latin. This name was always the proper name of Satan, that is the devil.
In quam Lucifer quinescit occasum, Christus filius tuus.
When this name increasingly and openly is presented in Latin worship, it is a very clear statement. The recognition of this apparent disguise of Lucifer is leading to worldwide indignation now. Because if you stick to the age-old definition of the Oxford Dictionary, the Catholic presenter in its liturgy sings nothing else than Lucifer, with his flames, he may appear at the morning. This Lucifer I emphasize, who does not know doom. Christ, your Son, who has come back from below. He illuminated humankind with serenity and lives and reigns in eternity. An ever-growing amount of proof that the Catholic Church is in reality worshipping and honoring Lucifer as the true head of the Church has found more fertile ground. And on top of this, the largest space telescope in the world, named Lucifer, is making headlines. Who does it belong to? The Vatican. But see for yourself.
The statue of the Resurrection, located in the Vatican's Paul VI Audience Hall, is receiving some restoration work, which is scheduled to finish by December 9th. The statue can often be seen behind the Pope during his general audiences that are held in the hall. October 3rd also marked the 34th anniversary since the statue was introduced to the hall by its creator, Pericle Fazzini. Fazzini created the statue to show Jesus rising from the crater of a nuclear bomb. The Resurrection is made from red bronze and yellow brass and measures 66 feet tall and 23 feet wide.
Recently, the chief exorcist at the Vatican reported that the devil was in the Vatican.
Morgan. Wolf, Reverend Gabriele Amorth made headlines around the world recently when he said the devil was present in the Vatican.
You're talking about something very real, aren't you?
Certo, realissima. Dico, se credete al Vangelo, credete all'esistenza del demonio.
Absolutely, very real.
As to the devil's presence in the Vatican, he says that's no surprise. He once had to perform an exorcism on another exorcist.
The first thing we need to do if we're going to find out if the devil is at the Vatican is take a tour underneath the Vatican. As we arrive underneath the Vatican, we see that it is laid out in a number of rooms marked by letters, as we could see in this aerial view map. Now we will be exploring some of the rooms in this map. Let's start off by looking in room C here. As we look into the room, we see that this is a mausoleum of a Lucius Tullius Zethus. The Vatican goes on and explains that this room was used for offerings to the dead. We read, view of the north wall and mosaic floor. In the corners of the mosaic floor there are 8 marble squares with circular holes through which offerings to the dead were poured during the funeral rites carried out in the burial chamber. So here we have a room where offerings are done to the dead. That's pretty common in Catholicism. Now if we look in the next room, room E, so here in this room they have a vase which has the image of a Medusa. So here underneath the Vatican, we have a Medusa. Again, we ask ourselves the question, this is a vase, but yet it's kept underneath the Vatican. This could have easily been removed. If the Vatican was a holy church, you would think that they would have done this. You think underneath the Vatican they would have things that are sacred to Christ and not foreign gods, not idols and images of foreign gods. Now, as we move down further to room H, here we see that this is the mausoleum that is one of the largest and most luxurious mausoleums underneath the Vatican of St. Peter's Basilica. It says that it was built at the beginning of the second half of the 2nd century during the reign of Emperor Marcus Aurelius and belonging to a freedman of the important Valeri family. And as we're in this mausoleum, we see that there's lots of idols from the old Roman Empire. We ask ourselves, why does Rome keep these idols down underneath St. Peter's Basilica? You would think if they were Christians, they would want to clean all this out. I can't imagine anybody who has a true church would keep idols in their churches, especially pagan idols left over from a bygone pagan era. But here we have the Vatican keeping many pagan idols underneath St. Peter's Basilica. Here is an idol the Vatican is displaying of a head of a child in gilded stucco and a lock of a hair typical of one initiated into the cult of Isis. And this particular idol is an idol of a boy who was initiated into the cult of Isis. If we look in this room, we see that some of the stucco decorating the walls. Here we have a personification of Oceanus. We remember the New Testament book of Revelation says that a beast comes out of the ocean. And so we say, why is the Vatican having these foreign gods underneath its basilica? Why is it protecting them? If it was a true church, it couldn't be doing it for the sake of art, especially with all the evil things that are happening in the Vatican. And as the priest earlier said, that evil does exist, the devil is real, as he admitted. But the hypocrisy of all of this is that they have all these evil images and idols underneath the Vatican of St. Peter's Basilica. We also see two figures of genuses with bat wings also portrayed on the walls. Again, this is supposed to be a holy church and a holy place. Now, this is supposedly all there for many, many years. As we move into the next room, room I, the details of the mosaic floor with Mercury and Pluto's chariot, they go on and explain that this theme is an explicit reference to the overcoming of death and the return of the afterlife. They describe it as a splendid mosaic floor of Mercury is depicted carrying a caduceus with wings at his ankles, walking in front, and a chariot carrying Pluto and his wife Persephone. So here we have all these Roman gods underneath the Vatican, images of foreign gods. Well, as we move to the next room, we find out why they keep all these idols down there in these images. As we move to room U, here we find the shock of all shocks. Here on the wall, it says there is a depiction of Lucifer, that is, the light bearer, the morning star. On the opposite of the wall, there is a drawing of Vesper, the evening star, cosmic symbol of the human life cycle. We find out that when we get to room U, here we have a clear depiction of Lucifer underneath the Vatican at St. Peter's Basilica. We ask ourselves, why are they keeping this image of Lucifer underneath the Vatican? We know that they'll go on and say, oh, well, we're saving it because it's a UNESCO heritage site or something like that. This is always their excuse, saving it for the sake of art. But for the true Christian, this is not an excuse, because we know if you're giving glory and propaganda to false deities and false pagan gods, what are you doing? You're in essence supporting the evil spiritual realm. This cannot be from God. And since Rome claims itself to be the one true church, you would think they would lead by example. Now this image here underneath the Vatican has been there since their claim, which would be Constantine. We would know that he was the first one that built this basilica. And so again we ask ourselves, why are they keeping this depiction of Lucifer underneath the Vatican? And even now, as it is filled with Freemasons, and so we know that the reason why they're keeping all of this there now, and they're actually revealing this on their internet website, is because they want people to see this. They want people to see what they're really all about. As you go down underneath the Vatican, down into the next rooms, they will try to convince you on this tour that you take that Peter is buried down there in one of the rooms, and that this gives credence to following the Pope. But we ask the question, why would you want to follow a Pope who has all these evil things underneath his church? Now, if you are a Catholic and you are watching this video, we want to encourage you to come out of that church. As you can see from these images and these idols that are kept underneath your church, we would hope that you would soberly think about these things and ask yourself the question, if my church is a true church, why is it promoting these things? Why does it even want people to see these things? Verse 4, where it says, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, 'Come out of her, my people, that you may not participate in her sins, and that you may not receive of her plagues, for her sins have piled up as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities.'"
It's a song about people. You could enslave our bodies, but you couldn't enslave our spirit. And those songs came out of our spirit. Here, the spirit can go everywhere it wants to go. And then it comes out here.